I'm Shane Tecklenburg.
I'm Craig Campton, and this is The Skinny.
From the Fatheads Eyewear Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny, brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, General Tire, and Dream Giveaway. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition here of The Skinny. We're looking forward to today's show for sure. A couple of clowns on here with us, but boy, they are sharp at their job. No, I'm not talking about Rico.
Oh, I thought you were talking about us. Hold on a minute here.
Of course, Rico sitting alongside Ken Stout. We have Shane Tecklenburg, who's the first repeat here on the show. Appreciate him coming back. And Craig Campton is also going to join us. A couple of names that you might not be familiar with, by the way. They're not necessarily household names in terms of motorsports, but a couple of the guys that are behind the scenes definitely have been a huge part of some very successful teams and continue to do so. So it's nice to get the guys that are in the trenches to come in here and tell some of the stories along the way. So right off the bat, I want to start off on a subject that's near and dear to Shane Tecklenburg's heart. You were working on an older Cosworth. Can you talk about that?
I was contacted by this company that does historics, I think in the middle of the summer. And they said, well, look, we've got this old Cosworth turbo IndyCar motor, and we need you to come and tune it. We're going to, convert it over to MoTeC, and so stuff like when they ran those. So that thing was from 1995, and as a matter of fact, it actually is, and it came from the car that Villeneuve drove in the 95 IndyCar series. So it's, it is. I don't know if it's the engine, but it certainly is of the type that they ran at Indianapolis in the 90s. And the engine management systems, the control systems, whatever they used in those days, they're outdated. This is 30 odd years ago by now, or at least 25. And the people that were able to adjust them, manipulate them, and worked on them in those days have either passed on or at least moved on to the point where there's no support for them at all. So if you're a historic racer and you have one of these things and something goes wrong with it, you literally, you've got no way to fix it other than to convert it to something that you can actually adjust now, which is how I got involved with it. So this company, RM Motorsport from Michigan, that's what they do. They do historics, and they had, actually the engine was over in Livonia at Roush Racing, and Roush was doing the engine. And so we ended up going to Roush to run this thing on the dyno and tune it. And it was really kind of bitchin', because it had all this cool stuff on it, like from that era that I never ever thought about doing to like help improve throttle response. And those things were limited. They had a pop-off valve on top of the intake manifold to limit the boost. And depending on the engine type, you ran a certain amount of manifold pressure, and the pop-off valve was supplied by the series to control the manifold pressure to keep the horsepower in check. Right. So if you had a Cosworth, you ran a certain amount of boost, like the little stock block Indy V6 Buicks that Menard ran. Those had more, obviously they could run more manifold pressure. There was another, like a Honda, it could run some other manifold pressure. So the manifold pressure was the limiting factor on the power level, so they could keep all the cars competitive with each other. And this thing had all kinds of cool shit in it, like a 9th throttle blade in the plenum after the turbo. And it had these really cool, like, clamshell looking guide vanes that led air into the turbocharger compressor, which was like blew my mind. And there's no like manual for this thing. These guys just get this engine and it's a pile of whatever it is, and they have to figure out how to put it together. So it took a little bit of a while to figure out how to get the guide vanes to work like they should, and not block the airflow into the turbo. But this was all manual controlled stuff. Like it had cables and linkages and all kinds. It was just so cool. And it made like whatever, I don't know, 750 horsepower or something like that. And it was just fun to work on and see how they did things at that time.
I remember when you were doing it and watching it, and I was like, oh my God, dude, that is so awesome. I mean, it's so archaic now, what you're saying, but at the time, that was cutting edge. I mean, beyond cutting edge stuff. It was super cool to watch you trying to figure it all out.
That was the thing to have, though. Lola Cosworth, I mean, those were the winners.
That actually comes from World War II Russian, like, fighter jets. It's called a swirl throttle, used in the mid '90s in IndyCar, and you can currently buy for a over-the-road diesel. They use a drive-by-wire motor basically hooked to that swirl throttle to control the turbocharger and control EGR into currently road-driven diesel engine. So the technology is started World War II. They're still using it today.
It's great stuff. I just remember watching that video, and I just wanted to touch on it, and so we could post a video up here, and we'll send people off to your site as well. I think I saw it maybe on Facebook. You probably have it on Instagram or maybe another site somewhere. Tuned by Shane. What's Shane T tuning today? And he was tuning one of those Cosworth engines. It was pretty awesome.
Wow.
I get to work on some pretty awesome stuff, man. I pinch myself all the time. Can't believe I have this job and I can actually make a living doing it. It's crazy.
So for the folks at home, and myself, by the way, I am part of this group here. Craig Campton has joined us here on the show. Craig, fill us in, man. Give us a little bit of history, where you come from, how long you've been in this deal, what you primarily do, and for the fans that are listening and wondering what direction we're going with this show, now that we're past Shane T, we're going to focus in on the Level 5 experience that both Shane T and Craig were part of at one time. And yeah, that noise, that background noise, by the way, I'm convinced that's Shane's either his fax machine or his dial-up. I
think it's actually his dot matrix printer going to hell in a handbasket.
He took his phone outside. That clearly was not it.
Yeah, actually, it's all of his money trying to get out of that squeaky wallet, screaming, wanting out.
So fill us in, Craig. Tell us about yourself, man.
I was a public works employee for a long time. I started a small business back in the mid '90s, which I named it HyperSports. It kind of went with my personality at the time, and did that deal until the early 2000s, maybe 2004. And I was at a point for public employment that I was, I'd kind of advanced and didn't really have a lot of options to move forward. Had thought about going full time with the HyperSports deal, was nervous, whatever. And in 2004, a good close personal friend of mine, Joe Hornick, who at the time was in a transitional period from the Greg Anderson, Jason Line, KB Racing over to Cagnazzi. He asked me to come down and speak with him, and there was some opportunities there. And at the time, it didn't really make sense. There was some stuff that happened where my supervisor, who was a great man, was looking at retirement, and just the way the public employment deal was going. And stuff at HyperSports was doing fine, but that opportunity came again in 2005, and I went to work for Victor Cagnazzi and did about a 3.5-year stint there. Following that, I did some privateer stuff for Jim Yates and Ryan Andreyko, and then in I think 2009 or early 2010, I was hired by Johnny and Shane Gray. Joined up with those guys, which that was an incredible ride. Had a lot of fun with those guys, and moved from when I finished up there with Cagnazzi, I moved back to Wisconsin, kept my home in North Carolina, and came back here. And I was flying in and out of the national events, and the deal came about with the Kelly Moss Level 5. DSR thing, right when I was kind of still involved with the drag racing stuff, and it just seemed like a good opportunity, a good point. We had a fair bit of momentum here at the shop because I actually opened shop back up, even though I was flying in and out to the national events, and we just kind of took one of my passions, which was snowmobiles, and one of my other passions, which was drag racing, and merged the two. And we've been making Outlaw Drag Race snowmobiles, turnkeys, for coming up on 10 years now, I guess. So that combined with the numerous unique contract labor jobs that we get involved with, whether it be road racing or tractor pulling, still some drag race stuff, we try to focus primarily on our snowmobile stuff, but certainly in years of past, it wasn't always enough snowmobile work to keep us busy full time, like it is now. But I've been very, very fortunate here in this little niche market. We are, I feel like we're at a point in our business right now that we've been backed up on builds. We've got 10 new builds, turnkey builds, which we physically make and manufacture, not only the chassis but the engines. Man, we're surrounded by great customers. This is the best customer base I've had in years, and I don't have anybody that currently that is undesirable. So when the phone rings, I mean, it's good to talk to my customers, and it's good to have the cool and unique builds. I probably, once this gets out, when I was kind of dog cussing the supercharger deal there, we built a supercharger sled in the past, and we just wow, is that you, Shane? That noise?
If it is, I don't know. I can't hear.
The aliens are landing.
That's what it sounds like.
Whenever you go to Marketplace and you buy that laptop for $150,
right? Yeah, and you don't have.
It only makes a noise once in a while.
Yeah, it only has some demons in it.
So we're going to take a quick break here, but for our fans at home that maybe don't recognize some of those names, and he's talking about Cagnazzi and Yates. He's talking about some of the biggest pro stock racers of all time, of course, back in the day, and then of course move forward on with his own company in the Outlaw Drag Racing for snowmobiles. So plenty more to go. We're just getting going here in this episode. The payday is going to be Level 5 Motorsports. We've got a couple of incredible stories that these guys were right in the middle of. So we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back on the other side, and we'll get to talking about some incredible sports car racing. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by General Tire. For over 100 years, General Tire has provided tires for your lifestyle, your adventure, your anywhere. From the aggressive mud terrain Grabber X3 to the all-terrain performance of the Grabber ATX to the strong and durable all-purpose terrain Grabber APT. General Tires balance excellent on-road performance with off-road capabilities designed for all weather conditions. Remember, with General Tire, anywhere is possible. For more information or to find your local dealer, head over to generaltire.com. And welcome back to The Skinny. By the way, we want to remind you about the $100,000 challenge. Fatheads Eyewear has been named official sponsor for the inaugural Hoosier Classic Fatheads Eyewear 100K Challenge. The 2021 Hoosier Classic will host a trifecta of open-wheel pavement racing featuring champion sprint cars on Friday, August 13th, champion midgets on Saturday, August 14th, and the USAC Silver Crown Series held later that same day. Set to take place in conjunction with Brickyard 400 weekend. It will be a very busy weekend, of course. Drivers will compete on the oval at Lucas Oil Raceway. Win 2 of the events, claim a bonus of $50,000, win all 3, and take home the top prize of $100,000. You can pick my good friend sitting on the other side of the desk pocket. He's the one that posted it up there. 100K, baby. Come and get it.
When did we do this?
Remind me again, how much was that?
Yeah, hold on a minute.
I thought it was $1,000 bonus.
Yeah, did somebody add a zero to this thing? No, it's going to be a great event, and they've got a lot of cool things leading up to it. Lucas Oil Raceway is really building, they're building back a lot of the heritage and a lot of the things that they used to have back in the day that made Lucas Oil Raceway what it is today. We are very proud to be involved with it, and Mr. Casey Kohler, that is the track guy that runs all the tracks for the NHRA, And I don't know what Shane's doing, but I'm going to strangle him the next time I see him. And anyhow, so no. But yeah, so we're excited to do it, and it's amazing the entry lists that are coming out for this. So for all of you that remember Thursday Night Thunder and got to watch a lot of those great duels out there, whether it was with our friend Danny Drynan or our buddy Tony Stewart, you're going to see a lot of that, and you got the Swanson boys going at it. So. I don't know if they win if they'll ask for less in sponsorship, but anyhow.
Oh, that's great. You're actually able to turn it up now? Have you figured out how to turn it up, Shane?
Sorry, let me remove my fat head's eyewear.
This is great.
Luckily, thank God, I can't hear it. So it doesn't affect me at all.
You really can't hear that?
No, I don't hear anything on my end, which is great. This reminds me of the story that my wife tries to tell me about me snoring.
Yeah, see, I don't ever hear myself do that either. Yeah.
Bother me a bit.
Craig, are you guys possibly running a snowmobile on the dyno right now?
We are not.
Damn it.
Silent.
Thought maybe that could have been it.
No. Chase is prepping some blocks, and it's not coming from here.
Three of the four of us can hear it loud and clear.
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe it's getting close
clearly.
Maybe it's getting close to feeding time, and this is possibly Shane's stomach growling. Just a thought.
Is there ever a time that's not close to feeding time for Shane's stomach?
I mean, I can relate. Bud.
There's 3 fat guys here, dude. We get it. Well, maybe 4.
Listen, I'm just glad that you guys have this to pick on me for, so that you don't find anything, actually that's relevant to pick on me for.
Just because we found this doesn't mean we rule anything else out. So
yeah, we've got a laundry list. Ken's got papers over here, by the way. If you see that.
So as we move forward here, whenever you talk about a team like that was so successful and doing what you guys did at that extremely high level, I think this falls in line here with Level 5 Motorsports. Very, very successful team, but only a handful of guys, even that make it to the highest levels of whatever discipline of motorsports they may be in, only a handful of guys really get involved with a team that will look at them and say, budget isn't the issue as long as we win. If we can win, I'm not going to bitch about the money. Now, if we spend the money and we don't win, now we're going to have a talk. We've got a problem here. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the feeling that that's how Level 5 Motorsports was. Scott Tucker and the boys, whenever they decided to pull the trigger and go, man, it was give me the absolute best you can give me, and he had the best of the best working on that team.
The Level 5 deal was so unique in that it was truly the biggest team effort that I had ever been around in, and it was the support within the organization for wild and crazy. It was unbelievable. And I mean, obviously they had assembled a bunch of veterans. I mean, a bunch of people that were very well seasoned and knew what was going on. And it was I think it's safe to say that I will never experience anything like that again. Just where so Tucker certainly was properly funded to do anything that he set his mind out to do. And just the people that they put in the places to accomplish the specific goals. And it was cool because they broke the whole deal down. I remember when they walked in the shop out here, and this was prior to them even really deciding exactly what they were going to do. And they were talking about doing a 2-stroke 3-cylinder DSR combo. And I knew nothing about DSR, and I'm like, where's the rules? So I think Kipley handed me the rules, and I looked at them, and I'm kind of going through them like, oh, that's dumb. That's dumber. That sucks. I'm like, wait a minute. You can run a 4-cycle, 4-cylinder, 650-ish cc turbocharged engine against these NA engines? Well, yeah. I'm like, we're done talking. this is it. Oh, are you sure about that? I said, absolutely, I'm sure. So, and it was that was kind of the start of it. And then to watch, David and Jeff and Tucker. They gave you every tool, every opportunity. They gave you everything you needed to be successful. All you had to do was just own it. Just make it happen. And they didn't. There was no time for excuses. Just make it happen at whatever the cost may be. So it was unbelievable.
So I'm going to set this up here a little bit for people that aren't familiar. Level 5 Motorsports, an extremely successful sports car racing team, really dominated an American Le Mans Series, LMP2 category, a ton of wins, a ton of championships along the way. Tucker won a championship setting like a 10-race winning season or something like that around 2009. 2010, they ran the Rolex 24. Matter of fact, 2014, I think they won the 24 of Daytona, which would have been Grand Am at the time, if I'm not mistaken. So, a very high-level team. But at some point, they also ran LMPC. I think they won a championship with that as well. But at some point, they decided to play, and you mentioned it, the DSR car. So the sports racers, DSR standing for D Sports Racer, there's a C Sports Racer. I know of those two. And I remember around that time, my son was in sports cars as well, and I was looking at some of those sports racers for really a test car just to help him advance in his driving ability. But looking at them, I realized how advanced some of those were. Like, that's when the store had come into play, and it was a pretty expensive car. Carbon fiber was working its way into the deal, so it definitely got out of my price range for sure for us to even look at it and go compete. But point I'm trying to make is it's a super, super cool car. They race it at a club level with Sports Car Club of America, SCCA, but it's a really fast club-level car, and for the most part, they use the 1,000cc motorcycle engines in the back of them. So they're a pretty durable car. They're pretty cost-effective to run if you can afford the car. Lightweight car, but a lot of fun to watch, and also, of course, to race. So that's what you mentioned, and I want to kind of set the platform, the foundation for the D Sports Racers, for the people that are listening in might not be familiar with what's going on. And whenever I say expensive, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like maybe a brand new state-of-the-art winning car was maybe around $100,000 or something like that. Maybe ballpark, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but you could probably find like a really decent used car for probably in the $60,000 range, somewhere in there. But the stores, I think, had really kind of taken over. So, it's a lot of money. In terms of racing, it's not a lot of money, but in terms of club level racing, it's a pretty expensive car to go out and play with. So, but whenever you hear this story about what Scott Tucker, the Level 5 Motorsports team, decided to do with this D Sports Racer, when they blew away. Forget about any budget. There was no budget. Easily $500,000 in this thing by the time you got done, right?
Probably 10 times that.
Yeah, it was. I would say 10 to 15 times that. It was.
Well, I heard one. Help me out here, but I heard one story where it was in the wind tunnel for 2 days. It was on the shaker rig for 2 days, and then there was some sort of program they had it on with. Did I hear this right? 42 or 43 computers logging stuff?
No. There were 43 computers doing CFD design. And by the way, all of the shaker rig, wind tunnel, 7-post shaker, all of that stuff happened with that was not the car we ran. That was the one they bought just to see what it was. They bought. So look, first of all, to the end of level 5, and we know that Tucker's money came from wherever it came from. That's a totally separate issue, totally separate story. But everything Craig is telling you about the budget, listen, I worked for sheiks in the Middle East that had unlimited budgets. Even they weren't as unlimited as this deal with Level 5 was, from the standpoint of every single thing I ever mentioned. there was no question about it, except, is that the absolute best thing you can think of to do that job?
So how was Tucker so good guy, bad guy? What was he? What was he about?
For me, Tucker was a great guy. Look, I probably talked to the guy 5 minutes in the whole 9 months or 10 months that we ran this program. I saw him at the racetrack for about 3.5 minutes getting in and out of a car. He was totally cool. He came to me the very first time he met me and said, thanks for agreeing to come on board and be a part of this. And it's like, this is like the best job ever. Are you joking? But, he was really cool, really personable, very nice guy.
What you're about to tell us all happened in about 9 months, from buying mule cars and developing to the final race at the runoffs, the SCCA runoffs in 2012. Okay, go.
Short story is they call me and say, can you come up? I think I was actually at the, maybe it was October, but I was at the Texas Mile running the Ford GT. And so I left the Texas Mile and I flew up there to their shop in Madison, and we started looking at what they had. Well, they had this engine, the allowed turbocharged displacement was 670 cc. There is no 670, right? The bike motors are 600, 750, 1,000. There's no 670. So how they came up with 670, I don't. Maybe they were trying to stop anyone from trying to build one because no one makes one. So Rick had figured out if he used parts from a 750 in a 600, he could make a 650 relatively easily, so that we would have a test mule engine to play with. And at the time, they had gone and looked for the only turbo that would fit that size of an engine from Garrett. And I think it was maybe like a GT25, or maybe it wasn't even a GT25. Maybe it was like a GT22. It was a tiny little thing. For that size engine, there was literally only one choice for a turbocharger. And, I had connections with Precision, and they didn't make anything that small. I had connections with some of the other turbo manufacturers. Nobody made anything that little. So it was like there's one turbo available. And so if it doesn't match the engine well, it won't perform well, right? But they asked me while I was there, they said, listen, the normally aspirated engines make 212 horsepower or 215 horsepower. What do you think we can make with, one of these as a turbo? So, I'm trying not to shoot myself in the foot and give them some, pie in the sky number that we can never achieve, that they'll hold me to, and then just say, I don't know what I'm talking about when it doesn't do it. So like, how much does a normally aspirated one of these make? Well, it makes like 105 horsepower. I'm like, all right, well, 15 pounds of boost, it'll make 210. At 30 pounds of boost, it'll make 300. And they're like, 300? And I said, well, I think so. I don't know. We're going to have to try it and see, guys. We'll find out. So they said, all right, let's do it. So from that point, it was, here we need, put a wastegate here, put an intercooler here, put the turbo here, and I'll see you in a month and a half or whatever, and we'll dyno it. And I'll just stop at this point so Craig can chime in with anything he needs to chime in with, and then we'll take it from there as we started to play with this thing. Because I'll just go for an hour straight if you just let me. So I'll stop, let someone else have a chance.
So to what Shane said is absolutely accurate. We were a little bit. And I'm not going to say who, but we were a little bit hand-tied when we got to going talking about the turbochargers, because I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was like a 2560 or something turbo that we started with. But they were asking the same questions when they were here, and this is prior to getting going. And then once we kind of got stuff situated in the car and laid out the orientation of the turbo and where the hot stuff was going and where the cold stuff and where we're putting coolers and things like that, and then it kind of got that stuff going. Rick was building mule motors. Now, mind you, in the process of trying to develop this 670 cc deal and build a mule motor, they're also in the process, and I don't recall, Shane, maybe you do, but I think they built 10 or 11 of the NA motors just in case, for the other car that they were building. This was the wildest display of spending money likely ever in this period of time, likely ever in the nation, if not the world. I mean, they were spending, the amount of money they were spending per week rivals what NHRA Pro Stock teams spend in a year, literally. And
that was the plan going in. We're going to do 2 cars in parallel, a lightweight, normally aspirated, and this turbo thing, and whichever one we think we can win with. And the goals when we started were 2 main goals. Number 1, they wanted to win the runoffs. Number 2, they wanted to run less than 2 minutes a lap in competition because no one had ever done it before. If we could run less than 2 minutes a lap at Road America, that was going to be, a major bonus to the whole program. So that was our 2 goals the whole time. So I'll just go a little bit further and I'll stop again. We're going to have to trade back and forth. Otherwise, we're going to just hear ridiculous amounts of time on each person's version of the story. So when I got there to run the engine, the very first time with this turbo, I'm looking at the turbo going, there's that f***ing thing. It's not big enough to make the power we want to make, but we're going to try it. So we ran the engine. The very first dyno session, it made 289 horsepower. They couldn't believe it. And the turbo was upside down. So I'm saying, listen, if we can get a turbo that actually works for this size engine, we can make way more than this amount of power. Okay, we just ran to the limit of what this turbo that's not a good match for this engine is capable of doing. So we need to investigate, figure out a way, to get the turbo built. And that's where I got in touch with my guys at Forced Performance, Robert, and his group down in Texas, and had them build us custom turbochargers specifically for this application. And when we did that, we ultimately were able to make 430 horsepower with this engine, and that killed the normally aspirated side of the project. From that point on, the engineer, Jeff Braun, came to us and said, the normally aspirated setup, we're going with the turbo, and let's just focus on how do we make the turbo win. I mean, whatever we have to do, we're doing this. This is the right way. That other way is not worth chasing. So yes, they had 10, 12, 14, however many engines they thought they were going to need normally aspirated to make it through all of that testing and development and the race. And they stayed on the shelf while we focused on how to get the little turbo engine to live. So Craig, I'll let you go now at this point if you want to say something.
Yeah, so I just want to add to that once we switched the turbochargers, it was we had more power. We had more power than what we needed to absolutely flip the class upside down. And then it was to focus and concentrate, to keep the header from falling apart, to keep the exhaust valve seats from falling out of the cylinder head. So there was a lot of stuff. The thing made enough power that we could likely, I'm surprised we didn't drive over the crankshaft. Honestly, just with what we were doing endurance wise, because we were making drag race displacement wise, we were making drag race power levels in an endurance application, which everybody knows the stuff that's associated with that. So that was Rick's deal, and Rick is not here today. He'll be here tomorrow. I wish he could have been here. He would have got a kick out of this, but the amount of burning the candle at both ends, the burning the midnight oil, if you will. I mean, it was not uncommon to be 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to get all the little issues of a small displacement engine operating at this power level, trying to get through all the issues. And
so by the way, but when he's talking about the power per cubic inch, he's not talking about pro stock power. The bike motor will do better than that when you buy it from Suzuki. Okay, This thing was 41 cubic inches. Okay, we made 431 horsepower with the mule motor, right? The cobbled together out of the junkyard 670 and 750 and 600, which, by the way, Craig, I don't know if you remember this. At one point, because we started with that 600 bottom end, the clutch wasn't ready for this on the engine dyno. So we made about 260 or 70 horsepower, and then it started making less every time we turned the power up. It was like, well, hang on, what's going on here? Like, the engine's on the rev limiter, but the dyno says it's only at 9,000 RPM. Right, that's because the clutch is slipping. So how do we fix that? So, take the 3 drag race guys, think about it for 2 or 3 minutes. Like, the clutch is slipping. I got an idea. What if it doesn't have a clutch anymore? Just drill it and stick bolts through where the clutch pack is so it can't slip. We don't need a clutch. We start it, we'll rev it up, kick it in gear like a dirt bike on the dyno, and off we go. So that's what we did from then on. So we didn't have a clutch slipping problem.
That clearly did not work off a pit road.
No, but so what happened was Rick had figured out how to make this 750 stuff go in this 600 to make it a 650. When we built the real engines for the car, we used either the 750 case or I think we used the 1000 case and turned it into a 670 with a custom crank, custom rods, custom pistons. This was actually brilliant because Rick is clearly a dyed in the wool, pro stock, normally aspirated. He's talking about. I mean, I remember having a conversation with him the first time about, well, what should we put in it for camshafts? And I'm like, you got the stock camshafts from the junkyard motor? And he's like, yeah. And I go, good, just put them in. He's like, well, that's never going to work. I said, listen, it's got a turbo. You don't even do anything to any of the internal parts. We're just going to hang the turbo on. So he could never get over that, right? He just couldn't accept it in his mind. And then he built this magical 670, which is the custom crank, custom rods, custom every single badass piece of bitchiness you could ever buy for any engine. And we put that on the dyno, and it made 445 horsepower. And the hunk out of the junkyard with the cobbled together crap made 430. And then he's a believer. And he's been a believer ever since. Yeah, but it was so funny. So me and Craig knew. Craig must have screwed with it enough to know. So we're trying to tell Rick, and he trusts us. And that was the thing with level 5 in this project. Every person you were working with, you knew was an expert, so you could believe in them. You didn't have to think that they were full of crap, whatever they were saying. It didn't always work that way, but almost always. But Rick was trying to be nice, and he was friendly. By then, we were pretty good friends, and he's obviously friends with Craig, and you could see the doubt. He's smiling, but you can see he's going, no, there's no way. There's no way better parts are not going to make more power. And they did make more power, but listen, when you start a turbo project and someone doesn't tell you beforehand, don't run more than this boost or don't run more than this horsepower, it's all you can do to not, at the end of it, have one more dyno pull. I just need to check one thing. Oops moment. Just so you can, oh, sorry, I typed 100 in there. I meant to type 10. Oh, but check it out. I made 600. That was pretty good. So I don't know. It never made that kind of power. To my knowledge, it never did. But it did make 445, the big motor. I have the data because I just looked at it for the first time in almost 10 years from the 650 mule. So I know it made 431. From memory, the other motor made 445. It didn't make a lot more. It made a little bit more. But I have all the dyno runs, but I don't have the horsepower number. But I could, if we could get back in the dyno data, we could figure out which one it was and see what it made. But to my knowledge, it never made that big number. I think it made 445 with, and so here's what happened, guys. So they were simulating all of these things. So there's CFD work going on with body. They're working with MoTeC up in Canada. They're using their F1 simulator. They build the cars in simulation, and they go drive it on the F1 simulator, which is like a video game but with full movement. I mean, it's like a $5 million video game. Okay, it's the best one ever in the world. So they build the car and they run it and they're up playing with the simulator at MoTeC. Jeff Braun and Colin Braun is driving the car in the simulator, And they've got Road America simulated, so we're as close as we can to the real thing. They're running the car. We're running it on the dyno. This is the second week when we got, or the second time on the dyno when we got the new custom turbos. So we run the first one, we call them up, we're like, yeah, guess what? It made 325. They're like, oh, awesome, okay. So they put that in their simulator and they simulate for a while. And then we call them back, go like, yeah, it's after lunch now. We made like 375. They're like, oh my God, that's crazy. So then they run that. So then we call them. At the end of the day, they call. We don't call them. They call us. Like, hey, how come you guys didn't call us? Like, we just finished. Well, how much you make? 430. They're like, what? So they simulate this thing, right? And they figure out we don't need anywhere near that kind of power. In fact, to do what we want to do, to run less than 2 minutes a lap in this car at Road America, we only need about 350 horsepower. It's like, okay, so now we can turn the boost down, right, and call the turbo guys and tell them, listen, here's the boost pressure we want to run. We now need a turbo that is the most efficient you can possibly build us in this range between this boost pressure and this boost pressure, between this mass flow and that mass flow. So they can recenter their compressor and build us something that is dead nuts in the middle of where we're operating to give us the best efficiency, right? So that's, first of all, that's awesome in and of itself. No one ever gets to do that. They just buy the one turbo and then they run it and it is what it is. You don't get to send it back. Give them the data that you've developed. I had sensors on this thing measuring temperature and pressure upstream of the compressor, temperature and pressure after the compressor, temperature and pressure after the charge air heat exchanger, turbo shaft speed, exhaust manifold pressure, turbine inlet pressure, turbine outlet pressure, turbine inlet temp, turbine outlet, every single thing you need to develop a turbocharger and turbine to drive it, along with, wastegate position and you name it. I have every sensor in the world I can imagine because that's my way anyways. And these guys are like, look, we don't care what you spend. It's just got to be awesome. So I'm like, well, I'm getting everything I've ever wanted. So I can supply this data to Robert Young at Force Performance, and he can, for the first time in his life, he's got actual real data to work from to build another compressor. So the guys are working on the simulations for the car up at Multimatic. I'm working directly with Robert, and it's a closed loop. Like he's building me a compressor based on the data I'm giving him. We're testing it, giving him more data. He's building another compressor. We're testing it. It just keeps going through this loop, and everything just keeps getting better. Meanwhile, Craig is doing, his part of it. It's like every time we put the thing on the dyno or go to the racetrack and the header breaks or the intercooler breaks or the intake manifold breaks or whatever it is, Craig's finding another better, stronger, or lighter, or whatever it is, usually just stronger, way to make this thing live. And the big problem we had is the exhaust side of the cylinder head. These engines were manufactured and designed to make 100 horsepower. We're trying to make 3 times that amount of horsepower. So we're basically trying to get rid of 3 times that amount of heat. And that became the Achilles heel of that engine. In the end, because we raced on a cool day, we only needed to use about 325 horsepower to do what we did with it. But at that power level, we figured out that we could only make it about 15 laps, like 65 miles or something like that. Whatever the mileage turns out to be, it's like 4 miles a lap. We had to go 13 laps. So it's 50 odd miles, and we could make it like 60 before the exhaust side of the head literally would just turn to butter and fall out. I mean, we ran them long enough in testing that they would have no compression at the end of the stint, because the exhaust side of the head, just the valves had moved, the valve seats had moved around so much that they didn't seal anymore.
Really incredible stuff, because you guys are really focusing obviously on the engine side of things and then the mechanical side of things for Craig to try and make this thing live. As you mentioned before, though, they're working on aero for the car. They're working on suspension for the car. You mentioned Multimatic, of course, one of the best of all time, and that incredible simulator they have. And then I also heard that the dampers that were on the car were of F1 technology as well.
They made sure that we had access to that technology for the suspension. So, there's a couple funny things about this. So first of all, when I was brought on, I mean, I knew just from the mere fact that they had hired me to work there and the level and quality of people that I was working with, that anybody that was involved with the project would have been a high-level expert, highly accredited, someone that you can that commands your respect right off the bat. And they didn't hire a dummy. They could afford to hire the best there was. And so that was a pat on your back if you worked for them, but also it gave you the ability to just literally trust anything anyone told you.
We're going to take a quick break here because if you're like I am, I want to know the payoff to this story. Did, in fact, they break the 2-minute mark? And did, in fact, did this car last for 13 laps? We'll have that on the other side. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Rhino Classifieds. Tired of all those ads and random stuff that shows up when you're looking to buy or sell your car parts? Rhino Classifieds was created just for you. Welcome to a streamlined buying and selling app created by racers for racers and race fans. Modified cars, classic cars, race cars, that special big block you need, the trailer to move your baby around the country in. We got you at rhino.co. So let's move along here because we've covered a lot of ground here with this DSR program from Level 5 Motorsports. And, of course, the big payoff that they were looking for as the aliens have clearly come back into Shane Tecklenburg's house. But the big payoff that we're looking for is the whole program was built, as Shane mentioned at the beginning, around two goals. One was to break the 2-minute mark at Road America, and the other one was, of course, to win the race. It was the Runoffs Championship SCCA race for the year of 2012. And without further ado, I'm going to cut over to Craig this time and let Craig fill in towards the end of this story, and we'll see if they accomplish the goal.
It was surreal. It was. I am certain that that nothing that I will ever be involved in will likely ever be to this level. The Tucker setting his goals, which at first seemed a little bit maybe a little bit out there, a little bit unreasonable, but for the goals that he had set, and then to watch him put the power and the money and the trust in all of these different personalities and all of these different people, and to watch and to be part of these people gelling together and rising to the occasion, and him achieving his goals was it's still mind-boggling, and you kind of it's good to reflect back on this because we're approaching 10 years since this magical date, and I don't know. It's good to reflect back on it. It definitely was a highlight of my motorsports career for sure, and it just I don't know if anybody will ever take the money and the people and the resources ever again and compile them in a manner to win any race, whether it be a SCCA deal or any sort of professional motorsport. So the bottom line was is they accomplished their goals, and it was there was no words. The emotions at the end of the day were off the chart, and very, very fortunate to be a part of it.
I mean, let's face it, the money that was spent and what was done here should never really be done at the club level. But I marvel at the fact of whenever you see a Ganassi or a Penske or a whatever big name team that you want to come up with and whatever discipline it may be, if you wonder how good these guys are, well, this was a good look at a professional level with no budget team going against club level guys. And without that, the benchmark would have remained, say, 101. The weather was cool there. Maybe they get to 201. Maybe they get to a 2-minute flat or something. They're like, oh, we got closer. Maybe they even break it, and they go a minute, 59.9, whatever the case may be. But to see what can be done when you assemble the right people and let them go at it, was nothing short of spectacular here.
But you have to understand, the mindset was, we need to control every variable and use every tool we can think of to do this job. So there was no like, oh, well, let's not use spotters because no one else has one. It was like, there's no rule against spotters. Let's have 10. Let's have two-way radio communication with the driver, which actually ended up not working real well. But there was no stone left unturned, no amount of money that couldn't be spent to do the job better. And you had 20 or 25 experts, very high level, forward thinking people, and everyone thinking to the best of their ability, how do we collectively do this job better? And I've never been a part of anything like that. And this is now 10 years later. And I've been a part of some pretty awesome teams and some teams that were very close to that. But nothing before or since has been as amazing as that was. And, maybe no matter how long we sit here and tell you that, maybe we can never convey what that actually means. I guess you kind of had to be there. But yeah, I look back fondly on that time at level 5 and what we did. And I especially look back fondly at all of the acquaintances that I made, like Craig, and Rick Kipley and Jeff Braun and some of those guys who are literally now I could send text messages to and say, hey, what you doing? And we've worked on other projects since doing things because, as you go through this life in motorsports, you get this Rolodex of badasses, in their particular field. And then when you get on another project and you need something, you say, oh, I know the guy that knows how to do that. Hang on.
So you're up at Road America in Wisconsin, Elkhart Lake. It's a chilly day in the 50s. It's cloudy. Rumor has it maybe even a little misty. They were talking about rain, and it could rob you guys of the opportunity. You've yet to tell us, did he break that 2-minute mark in the race, and did he survive the 13 laps?
So you're absolutely right. I forgot all about the rain. So that was the deal. We have everything covered. We've done everything we can do. We're going to do it. You just have to have a positive thought in your head at this point because you can't control whatever happens from here on out, right? He could stack it up. Someone could hit him. Who knows, whatever. And next thing you know, we're feeling raindrops. And it's like, so now 14 of us are all standing there on our phones. Everyone's trying to look at their weather app, and everyone's trying to be the weatherman and say, I think it's gonna be here in 45 minutes, and we'll make it almost through the race. We'll make it 10, whatever. So the rain ultimately.
And the last I checked, phones don't work that great there.
Oh, that's true.
No.
They don't work that great.
And that's the thing. You've got 14 of us all looking at arguably the same app on the same kind of phone, and every one of us is going, no, mine says it's not going to rain. Mine says it is going to rain. So we're hoping the rain's not. We can't do. If it's going to rain, it's going to rain. Short story, doesn't rain. Green flag drops. Tucker has about 500 feet on second place when they enter turn 1. We ended up going in about the second or third lap, 1:59. So we went under 2 minutes a lap officially. I think the quickest he went a lap or two later was like 1:58, 6, 8, something like that. And at that point, because by then the second and third place guys, which are the closest guys to us, one of them spun and something happened to the other one, or maybe we we were that far ahead of him. But we basically started telling Scott, okay, back it off. We've gone under 2 minutes a lap. Just, short shift the thing, take it easy. They're way behind you. And just let's finish the race because we have to make now another, 9 more laps of this place. And who knows what's going to happen. And so short story, really long, but as short as I can make it in the last 5 seconds. Yes, we won the race by 35 seconds over second place, and we achieved the goal, and it was a small thing. Again, it was we were basically in our own race. No one else had a turbo. No one else was even close. But it was nonetheless awesome. And, anybody that is a naysayer and thinks that, that shouldn't have happened and, that We shouldn't be allowed to do that. Well, they're just jealous because I can just about promise you if Level 5 had phoned them up to come and help, they'd have been on the next airplane to Madison.
That's exactly right. And I will, we've all given the respect to the club level guys. I get it. We shouldn't. You didn't go there, like you say, to just pummel those guys. They dangled the carrot. You went there for the goal was to break the 2-minute mark and of course win the race. But here's what I will say for all the people that were in that category that read the rule book, knowing that there was an option to put together a little smaller motor and utilize a turbocharger. It was laying right there. Would it have gone as fast as that car with all the technology that everything that you guys put into it? Probably not. But I bet you there was more than enough horsepower laying there on the table for any one of those club level teams to find and still break that 2-minute mark.
A couple of teams had tried it and they had scattered, the engine or whatever happened. Who knows?
Really?
But, but listen, it wasn't. You weren't just going to do it by hanging a turbo on whatever any car was and going. And that probably was how the efforts were done before. I don't know, but I would say now, for sure, you could do that. The big problem was the exhaust side of the cylinder head. So we were in the works to go back and race in 2013 in the same class with a billet cylinder head, that we were going to have enough water flow on the exhaust side that this wasn't an issue, because I think Tucker somehow was involved with West, and they were talking about trying to supply a car that people could, not what we had run, something turbocharged, like basically make it viable for someone to buy and actually be able to maintain and run themselves. But that never materialized, and that's okay, because then that means we're the only ones that ever tried to do it and actually succeeded at it.
And so that car is in your garage now? Where is that thing?
I wish it was. A few years after that, they called me, and I feel like someone from Chicago had purchased the car. By then, of course, and I think maybe the next season, SCCA, at the urging of probably everyone else in the class, had put a restrictor on the turbo. That was part of the other great thing about this, was that the rule book was basically, okay, here's your rules, 670cc, go. We had to run a fuel. We had to run fuel that you could get at Road America. So we couldn't run alcohol because we thought of that, or ethanol. But so we had to run gasoline. But you can get like 118 octane gasoline. So that was it. 118 octane gasoline, 670cc. Do whatever you want. Right. So this is basically this is 1970 turbo era Formula One all over again. Here's this. You can have this weird small 1.5 liter turbo, or you can run a 2-3 liter, whatever it is, normally aspirated engine. And once someone tries the turbo and it makes 5 times the power of the normally aspirated engine, then the whole field switches to turbo. We were the only ones running DSR with an F1 budget.
Time for a quick break. Don't go away. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Dream Giveaway. Dream Giveaway has been giving away high-end American muscle cars to raise money for charity since 2007. Dream Giveaway is known for giving away classic and new muscle and paying the federal taxes so the winners don't have to. For $25, you can jump in the game, and part of that goes to charity. You'll have a chance at winning some of the coolest cars on the planet. Check it out at dreamgiveaway.com.
So, Craig, switching gears here a little bit, your current, your business there, building the drag sleds. So the first time I ever watched those guys run was at Brainerd at the national event with the NHRA. Am I on the right page here with you?
You are. We build sleds for all surfaces, but Glen Hall, who Shane knows him as well, Glen has been with me for several years now, and Glen has kind of owned Brainerd, for you check out that Facebook video that's on our page. I think Glen's video is I don't know, approaching 8 million views, organic, non-advertised, non-boosted. But Glen is, Glen is, he is the man in NHRA Pro Stock for sure. Has been for quite some time. But that the asphalt NHRA stuff is one aspect of our business. But the biggest percentage of our sleds are snow drag race, 500-foot snow drag race stuff. And these are maximum effort, kind of a no rules type of deal, some rules, but extreme performance. 400 and the machine weighs 470 pounds, 1,050 horsepower, fire-breathing dragons of whether it be turbocharged or supercharged. It's that's how that is our primary source of income. Here we do a lot of engines as well for the snowmobile drag race world, but the brunt of our business is build to deliver, turnkey. We show up and hand you your sled, and you go race, and you go win. That's what we pride ourselves in.
We got to kind of, like, when we'd go to lunch at that one pizza place we used to always go to, that brunch place, and we'd spend some time talking about the thing we were working on at level 5, and then we'd spend some time talking about this exciting 2-cylinder insane thing that Craig was working on with a turbo, in our spare time.
So you're always on. So he's working on something, you were working on something, and you kind of focus on that, but then you start collaborating about other things, or maybe it's just a pipe dream. Like what if we did this, or what if we had one of these, and it just continues to spiral. And that's the beauty of the brilliant minds working together that were you three guys in this particular case. It's just super cool. I mean, I love to hear these stories. I love to hear, how does somebody, for a club guy, just a normal guy, and you look at a car, like, how did they possibly do that? How do you get a car to go that fast or make that much power? And it's just those baby steps of everything that you guys have learned over the years, and you all collaborate and work together, and man, it's a possibility.
And it should be noted too that there was a lot of naysayers, that there was a lot of people at the club level that thought, okay, these guys are taking this path, and there is no possible way that they will succeed, and there's no way you can make X amount of power out of 0.67 liters. And so it for sure needs to be said that we did. Granted, it was a very professional approach to a SCCA type of race. However, everything was done to the letter of the law. It was the interpretation of the rules from Shane's standpoint to Rick's to Braun's to. It was just there was a lot of motivation to kill it. To absolutely own this deal and to smash it out of the park. And that's an arena that's exciting for myself, and I know for Shane, and certainly we've touched on Rick many times, and everybody that was on the car side was killing it as well. But Rick Kipley, and I wish he could have been part of this today, but soft-spoken man of oftentimes not a lot of words, and for him to sit there and be to deal with Shane and I and some of our language and the profuse F-bombs and all the craziness, and Rick Rick is a he's a Christian. He is a soft-spoken. If Rick swears, we've got a problem, So it was, it was a beautiful blend, at least in the engine development, and from the engine management to the turbo stuff it was just in my opinion, it was the dream team for the three of us to be able to work together on this project, and like Shane says, there was never a point when I thought, wow, Shane, you're really, or Rick, you're crazy. It it was a thing of beauty, and it's we've carried that through, many years later, and Rick is a big part of HyperSports, and for him and I to carry on and to conduct our days in the same manner that Shane and I and Rick did, it was awesome, and our paths frequently cross throughout the year. I mean, I will reach out to Shane, and he helps me out on a lot of things. If we get puzzled or there's something that's perplexing, or maybe something that we haven't experienced, it's just you take this DSR project and the acquaintances that you have gathered from a crazy project like this, and it just kind of it burns into your mind. And you remember those people, and you reach out, and it makes you a better person, makes you a more capable person, because now you have got more resources. And often, I mean, there's days that whether we're working with a customer on a snowmobile deal or a custom contracting deal, but the resources in today's world, that's what makes you who you are. And I've said this 100 times, but the motorsports deal is a very, very small community. People think that, it's through all the different arenas of racing, people think that there's hundreds or thousands of people that excel in what they do. And quite honestly, it's quite the opposite. You could take all of the small groups of people that are great in their specific field, and we could have everybody stand in our shop here, and nobody's going to be running into each other. And it doesn't matter if you're in Cup or you're in World of Outlaw or you are a micro sprint racer or whatever the case may be. So this was an amazing project. I was very, very fortunate to be involved. Met some absolutely amazing people, and very,
Shane.
very blessed. So, and Shane, Shane, and we met Shane out of this.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that, being a part of that project elevated everybody's game. There's no question, from my standpoint, I got smarter. Everybody else may not have from me, but I certainly got smarter by being around all of them. Now, to the point of Rick cussing, so I've never heard the guy say entirely one cuss word. We were testing the DSR, I think we tested a week or maybe 2 weeks before the race, and we blew it up. Because we decided, I don't remember why, we decided we were going to try to run 14,500 or 15,000 RPM or something and see if we could. I don't remember why. We decided we were going to rev it up for whatever reason. It made power there on the dyno, so we thought, let's rev it up, change the gears. So we went, we did it, and it flung itself apart. And so it comes in, and it's smoking out the back. Right, that's your first clue that it's hurt. So it comes in, it's smoking out the back. Then you rev it up, and it sounds like the '56 Buick station wagon with a hole in the muffler. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's definitely got a dead hole. Okay, kill it. So we shut the motor off, and Rick goes. He didn't get the whole word out, and I looked at him because I'd never heard him cuss at all. And I looked at him, and he's like, you don't know how much work that just created. We have to take this in. Anyway, that was as close as he ever got around me to cussing. That was as bad as it ever got.
So once again, special thanks here to Shane Tecklenburg. Check him out. Tuned by Shane T. Shane T. What's Shane T tuning today? He's all over Facebook, all over Instagram. He's very easy to find and extremely talented. He is a freelance operator, and if you have the money, there's a pretty good chance he will come over there and help you out. Also, special thanks to Craig Campton. Sounds like he has plenty of business up there in Wisconsin, but certainly look him up as well if his talents are required by your needs. So look into both of those guys. They're as good as they come in the motorsports industry. Hope everybody had a great time. Thank you very much for spending your time with us here on The Skinny. Special thanks to all of our partners as well along the way. Some incredible stories, and you'll only find them right here. So now you know The Skinny on the Level 5 Motorsports DSR program. Thanks for being with us here on The Skinny. This episode has been brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, Dream Giveaway, and General Tire. For the latest in sunglasses, optical frames, accessories, and apparel, be sure to check out fatheads.com. That's Fatheads with a Z. Production facilities provided by Fatheads Eyewear Studios. All rights reserved.